world where the elements were discovered. We will make stops in which I will tell you some interesting stories about elements and about their discovery. So, are you ready for a trip? Okay, all elements on the table can be divided into three parts. The first part is primordial elements, which can be found in nature. The second part is radiogenic elements, which was obtained in the lab and then found in nature. And the third part is synthetic elements, which can be obtained only in the lab. So the plan of our journey will be structured in the same way. Before we go further, I would like to mention some features of the Mendeleev's table. The table illustrates where the elements were discovered. All countries and flags are current. For example, Russia stands for USSR. So let's go back in past. There are 13 elements: carbon, sulfur, arsenic, antimony, tin, bismuth, lead, mercury, gold, iron, and zinc. Ancient people were aware of the existence of new elements but didn't have an opportunity to produce the pure ones. People in the Stone Age couldn't assume that things are used on a daily basis like clay and stones are the derivative of separate chemical elements. So let's focus on outstanding scientists and discoveries of elements starting from Sweden. Do you know why we go to Sweden first? Maybe any ideas? Okay, I will tell you. Sweden is the leader in number of discoveries of chemical elements. For example, Carl Wilhelm Scheele is one of the most important Swedish chemists who introduced us a lot of elements, including fluorine and magnesium. Scheele was born in a very poor family and had to be a pharmacy student and study chemistry by himself. Even though he was a self-taught, he made a big impact into development of chemistry. Now we go to England. Please raise your hand. Who is from England? Okay, do you know who is Henry Cavendish and what is he famous for? Okay, England is the second country in the list of leaders in the number of discoveries of chemical elements. For example, hydrogen was discovered at first in England by Henry Cavendish, who called it non-flammable oxygen. So, next country is Germany. A total of 18 elements discovered. There are important studies of Clemens Alexander Winkler in 1885, as a result of which the element germanium was opened. I would love to make a small riddle for you now. So, to which country the Tahiti island belongs to? What? Yes, it's France. So, our next stop is France. One of the lengthy discoveries can be called the discovery of fluorine by the French chemist. And here we have an interesting story. As a chemical element, fluorine was predicted in 1810, and only 76 years later it was isolated in free form by Henry Moissan in 1886. So, besides the amount of discoveries by country, there are also chemical elements discovered that I would point your attention to. Our next country is Scotland. There are two major Scottish chemists, William Ramsay and Maurice William Travers. They discovered a number of noble gases, and particularly neon. It became very popular due to neon indicator lights that worked similar to neon advertising, as like this. As a result, neon indicator lights quickly spread throughout the world. As we are in Russia now, it would be worth to mention the discovery made by our country. So, ruthenium was discovered by a professor at Kazan University, Karl Klose, in 1844, and an article about this element has been published in the same year. The discovery of one very rare element, selenium, can be called very unusual. It was first found in 1782 in gold-bearing ores by mining inspector Joseph Müller in Austria. In 1798, Marcy Henry Klaproth identified tellurium and outlined its most important properties. One of the most essential discoveries of chemical elements is gadolinium, which was defined in 1880 by the Finnish chemist Johann Gadolin, who proved the presence of a new element, which was named after him. Talking about discoveries made by different countries, I would like to mention one exciting event, the discovery of aluminum in USA. In 1825, Danish physicist Hans Christian Ørsted saw how this metal looks like for the first time. Now listen carefully, this information may shock you. The modern method of producing aluminum was discovered in 1886 by a young American researcher, Charles Martin Hall, who at the age of 16 promised his college teacher that he would extract aluminum. And after 6 years, he managed to do this by electrolysis of molten aluminum oxide. Blind spots in the table attracted scientists all over the world. That is why some elements were discovered in different countries at the same time. For example, lanthanum is here. As a chemical element failed to be discovered for 36 years, however, Mosander was able to define this element only in 1839. The next element is niobium. It was discovered in 1801 by the English scientist Charles Hatchett in a mineral that was shipped back in 1734 to the British Museum from Massachusetts. The mineral was called columbite, and the chemical element was named Columbia in honor to the country from which the sample was obtained. In 1911, English physicist Henry Moseley predicted the existence of a new element that Mendeleev hadn't previously known. This element, number 72, was discovered only after 10 years by the Hungarian chemist George Hevesy and the Dutch physicist Dirk Koster. Scientists thought a lot about the name of the element and eventually identified it with hafnium in honor to the capital of Denmark, Copenhagen. The next element that I would like to talk to you is samarium. Okay. So, samarium was discovered by the German chemist Henry Rose in 1789 from the mineral of Samarskaya, named after a Russian engineer, Colonel Samara. So, what do you think? What kind of metal do all women like?
Gold.
Maybe more expensive than gold?
Platinum.
Yes, it's platinum. So, platinum is famous for several reasons. Firstly, this element was discovered all the way from Peru to Russia. Secondly, since ancient times in South America, local residents found a very heavy white metal, but they didn't know how to melt it on the strongest way. Moreover, this unusual metal was discovered in the 16th century by the Spaniards, who gave the metal its name. In 1740, Spanish geodesist and astronomer Antonio de Ulloa gave a scientific description of platinum for the first time. Soon samples of this metal were discovered in countries like England and Sweden. Russian scientists have discovered platinum in Yekaterinburg, near the Urals, in 1904, where the largest platinum nugget weighing more than 8 kilograms was found. Now I would really like to tell you about studies of another European country which is famous for its pizza. Do you have any speculation what is this country? Yes, it's Italy. So this part of my speech will be about Italy, in particular about gneissium. This element was discovered in 1937. Experiments took place in California, but the element remained unknown until irradiated molybdenum plates were sent to Sicily. There, Italian physicist Emilio Serge and his colleague Carlo Pirie discovered that it was created as a result of irradiation. It was the first synthesized chemical element. We have already discussed that some of the elements were originally synthesized in the labs and then found in nature. These elements can be called radiogenic. Do you know French spouses who discovered a lot of chemical elements? And who is it? Yes, it's Pierre and Marie Curie. So they discovered a lot of elements, including polonium, which I would like to talk to you now. Polonium was discovered in 1898 from uranium resin ore. They firstly announced about the discovery of this element in a meeting of Paris Academy of Sciences. In their report, the element was named after the birthplace of Marie Curie in Poland. I think we paid a little attention to England, so I suggest you to talk about discoveries made in England more. So here is radon as the fifth radioactive element. It was discovered by Ernest Rutherford and Robert Onnes after uranium, thorium, radium, and polonium. In the 915, Frederick Ernst Dorn found a radioactive gas that named radium emanation. But some elements synthesized in the laboratories haven't been yet found in nature. These elements include all elements after uranium that I would like to point your attention to. So, during the Second World War, two American chemists, George and Seaborg, discovered two new elements, 95 and 96. All the publication of their discovery were postponed until the end of the war. In the 40s, they obtained and described the elements 97 and 97 and 98. In 1953, in collaboration with Argonne Laboratory, George and co-workers discovered next two elements. After 2 years, they obtained the element 101. In the mid-50s, it became clear that it isn't appropriate, that their equipment isn't appropriate to work further. So later, the new methods of obtaining were used to discover elements from 102 to 106. After 20 years in Darmstadt laboratory, under the management of Peter Ambruster, it became able to obtain and describe elements from 107 to 109. In the early 90s, the groups at Becquerel and Darmstadt made a huge impact to obtain the element 110. The experiments in Becquerel was unsuccessful, but in Darmstadt laboratory, next two elements were synthesized. I think it isn't useful to talk to you about the element nihonium now, because the previous speaker told about. So I want you to look at these brilliant people now. So, next work of Seberg in the GINR laboratory in Dubna, under the leadership of Yuri Aganusyan, led to discovery of the elements from 114 to 118. Dear participants of Yuri's, I encourage you to look in your conference packs. You will find there Mendeleev's table, yes, that we have filled in together. We all come from different countries, and I truly believe that my table will be useful for your further scientific researches and will be beneficial for international science. Unfortunately, we don't have time to talk to each other more, so if you have some questions for me, please write me on my email. I would like to thank you for this perfect trip, and thank you to organizers to opportunity to participate.
Great. Veronika, thank you for the great presentation. So, yes, thank you very much. Yes, so she will accept comments and questions through